What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Art Shack. So I'm going to be continuing on my Mountains in the Mist sketch here, or drawing, whichever you prefer to call it. And in this one, I'm going to be drawing in the clouds. So in the last video, I had the initial sketch where I did this one. So in this video, like I said, I'm going to be drawing in the clouds. But before I get started with those, I'm going to grab the eraser and I'm going to erase out these lines that I made. And I suggest that you might do the same. The reason why I made them so dark is so that you can sort of see the placement of the clouds. And the reason why I'm erasing them is so that they don't show up. I don't want these lines to be all over the place in my clouds. It'll take away from the effect of them in the end. So, taking an eraser, this is a Magic Rub Prismacolor eraser. I picked these up a little while ago and I like them quite a bit. But other erasers I use, let me see. I have Stettler erasers. Oh man, I got too many. I like anything, the white erasers work really well. So any of those brands, the Stettler, Factus, they all work pretty well. And if you want to get a little crazy, get one of these Sakura electric erasers. Listen to that power of the eraser. The only problem with these is that they make a really big mess, and they're loud. But they work really well. So this is just like, there's really almost no reason to really get it. It does a really good job at erasing, but it's not exactly essential. Alright, so now with those lines erased, you do kind of have to add them back in again. So, I still have this line here. Oh well. But I'm using a 2H pencil, and unfortunately you won't really, I don't know if you'll be able to really see this line that I'm placing down, but it's in the same place as my other one was. So, or before I erased, it's going back in the same place, but I'm doing this just so that the line is a lot lighter, so that way it's easier to erase out in the end. Okay, and I'm just going to lightly erase this as well. Just so that the end result has a much cleaner look to it. Alright, so this video, I have no idea how long it's going to be, but it's probably going to be, it's probably going to be up there. So, in the meantime, I highly suggest that you full screen this one, because there's going to be quite a bit of detail going on within this. And as far as the different supplies go, definitely going to need a range of pencils, mainly 4B. 4B is the pencil I usually use to make the clouds, surprisingly, and definitely a kneaded eraser if you have one. It'll work wonders if you have one. Alright, so when it comes to drawing in these clouds, I usually shade in the sky first with a 4B pencil, and I'll go relatively dark. This helps to give the overall image a really dramatic look. And I'll really range myself on this pencil. I'll really hold back on it. And I'll go in like a cross-hatching motion, or sometimes a hatching motion, but it all depends on what I feel is necessary. So every time I do it, it's usually different. But again, I like to use a 4B pencil just because it really darkens the sky in, and it gives it a really nice effect. And the other tool that you'll need a lot is the blending stump. This is the main part of the drawing where you really need it. Not so much anywhere else, because remember, the blending stump helps to even out the tones. So if you add in a lot of detail to one area, and you take a blending stump and go over it, you'll effectively take out all the details that you worked really hard on. So just keep that in mind. Blending stump is great, but just keep in mind it'll take out all the details that you just added in. But in this case, where we're drawing in the clouds, it's not that big of a deal. And one big tip I can give you is where you have those lines of where you want the clouds to be, I usually shade right over those lines, because that's generally a guideline of where I want the clouds to end and the sky to begin. So I usually go right over that line. And don't worry, we go over everything with the eraser and bring back the original shape of everything and how everything was. So, but also too, the clouds aren't gonna look exactly the same as the original one that I did, but that's not to say it's a bad thing. It's I know I said in the first video that I did, it's hard to make something an exact replica. I'm just trying to make it relatively the same. So again, I'm doing this all with a 4B pencil just to really darken it in. So I have the initial layer. Now I'm gonna go in and do a little bit harder. I'm keeping my pencil direction in relatively, one direction. I don't want to, go in and start scribbling all over the place. It'll just create too much texture that'll be hard to really blend out and make even. So if you can go one direction here, it'll really help to make everything even and uniform. Alright, so I'm going to start blending this and see how it turns out. I have an old blending stump here. As you can see, it's been heavily used, but it's not that big of a deal. And then what you want to do with this is go in a circular type motion, just like that. And you want to press relatively hard, but not too hard. You want to let the tool do most of the work, and you don't want to force it too much. So you want to go in a circular motion, and just work out everything that you've done, just so that you get a nice smooth tone. But if there's a little bit of texture left, like this will probably leave a lot of texture. That's not a bad thing. Just keep in mind, texture usually adds a lot of attention to that area of the drawing, and having attention to the clouds, it could be a good thing too. Because the clouds in this one, I'm going to be adding quite a bit of detail in, so it's going to be a pretty heavy eye catcher within the end result of this drawing. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my drawing here that I did. If I can find it, it's in my notebook here, somewhere. Oh, I went too far. Alright, so I'm going to open this up. So here's the original sky that I did. And I'm going to prop this up for myself. That way I can use it as a point of reference. And I think you can find the original image of this on my Facebook page. I have it posted on there a couple times. And I'll put it in the description of this video. That way you can pull it up and look at it for yourself as well. It's always good to use it as a point of reference just to keep yourself on track, along with the tutorial that I'm making here. Okay, so usually what I like to do is I'll have the bottoms of the clouds be relatively shaded in, and the tops of the clouds be, highlighted. So in this case, normally what I do, and this is why I love having a dirty blending stump, it just makes it so much easier. I'll blend the bottoms of the clouds completely out. So just something like this, and just carry this, all up in here. I want to leave this area relatively intact and just kind of go to town with this and bring a lot of the graphite all up in the clouds. You want to leave some areas, really, really bright, leave them untouched, and other areas you want to really shade in. And I'll do the same thing over here. Something like that. Alright, Alright, actually, I am going to extend this cloud a bit over in this direction here. And when I'm erasing a circular motion. Just helps to bring a bit more detail into it and helps to really bring it out. And having a paintbrush on hand is always good while doing the clouds. You know, instead of using your hand and smudging everything, you can use a paintbrush and eliminate that almost completely. You know, just don't press too hard with it. I'm going to go with the electric eraser and really lighten this area up. You can see how that really brings a lot of that graphite up. You know, not completely, but about 90% of it will come up with that. So it is a really good tool to have, but it's not absolutely essential. You can also use this eraser. This is the Tough Stuff eraser stick. I think it's by Papermate. Yeah, it is. This one is a really good tool. And also a good idea is to use an extra sheet of paper, what's known as a slip sheet. That way you can rest your hand on here and you'll be able to, you know, work on it as much as you want without getting graphite on your hands. So that's always a good idea as well. Alright, so what I want to do was sort of extend this area out a little bit more. I want to make it a bit more similar to what I have in the reference. So just something like that. And then I'll come back in with this eraser to kind of get rid of a lot of that detail that I just made in there. Just something like that. So right now I'm just kind of perfecting the shapes before I really go in and start adding in the details of it. Just something like that. I'm actually unintentionally adding in details here, yeah, which isn't a bad thing. Alright. So now I got the shape of that one relatively, you know, the way I want it to be. And now I'll move on. This one is pretty good. This one's not bad. Keep in mind, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just kind of want to get the relative shape of it. And if you want to draw the clouds, you know, differently, by all means. If you want to, you know, do one large cloud or a million smaller clouds, it's entirely up to you. Alright, so I completely neglected this cloud down here. I'm going to go in and add some more details. Now I don't want to really ruin this line here, but I'm going to add quite a bit of, you know, moderate to light shadow down towards the bottom of the cloud here. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Zoom it back out a little bit. Alright. That way everyone can kind of get a better idea of what's going on. It's a little bit too dark right there. Whenever I'm drawing, I'm always careful to not really, you know, get my fingerprints on the drawing. And I'm also, surprisingly, I'm not really a big fan of using my fingers to smudge. Although it depends on the medium that I'm using. If I'm using pastel, I'll do it. But when it comes to graphite, I find that when I start using my fingers to blend and smudge, it can really, you know, smudge big time. And the real downside to it is that the oils in your fingers over time can really yellow the page in that spot. It may take a long time for that to really show up, but it can happen. Also, if you really press hard with your finger on the page and then lightly shade over it, you'll see that fingerprint show right up. So just want to keep that in mind when you're doing this. So I'm going to take the blending stump again. Actually, I'm going to grab the 4B pencil again, and I'm going to shade a little bit more. Also, keep in mind that when you look at a sky, or you know, paintings with skies or anything like that, the top of this, the top of the photograph or reference, whatever you're looking at, it's going to be much darker than the bottom, you know, closer to the horizon. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to really darken up this area here and carry that down into this area. a little bit up in here, just to really darken it up, and then take the blending stump, do the same thing, circular motions, really blend that out. You know, don't press too hard, but you want to give it a nice firm pressure. And if you find an area isn't really blending too well, I mean, you can keep working it in. But sometimes some areas just don't like blending too well, so you can kind of lighten them up a little bit with the eraser, and then go ahead and blend them right back in, and it should help that, if that's happening with you at all. And I'll blend up into this cloud a little bit more here. Same with down here. Just something like that. Okay, so here comes the detailed part. This part usually takes a little bit of time, but it's surprisingly not all that difficult. So the main tool that you would really need is the kneaded eraser. This is what really makes it easy. So I'm looking to see if I have any more kneaded eraser, but to make this one a little bit bigger, but that's okay. So you want to work it out a little bit and kind of ball it up. And this is the fun part. So on the bottoms of these clouds, you want to take this kneaded eraser, press it firmly, and like twist. Now you don't want to do this too much, but that's all it really needs. It's just a little bit of twist. So you want to do that a lot up here, kind of work it back and forth a little bit. Do the same over here. And what it does is it really starts to fluff up these clouds. Do it down here. See how it starts to really make them look fluffy? Alright, so now with that done, I'm going to go back in and sort of darken in the bottom part here. It'll still show up, but I just want this area to be darker. And I'm going to go back in, add a bit more of shadow in here. Alright, and so with adding more shadow in here, you can kind of go back in and do the same thing again with the kneaded eraser. You know, just a little bit here and there. You don't want to do too much inside of the cloud. And then you can go back in with the blending stump and reinforce some of the shadows again. That was a little bit too dark, but just go right back in and line it right back up. Alright, and so we'll just work this out a little bit more. There we go. With the with a fine eraser, if you have one of these erasers, you can just use the corner of it. It'll work as well. But up and around here, you can go up and really add in some highlights. So you can really make it stand out. And then with the brush, just brush that away. You can really make that area stand out. So I can do the same up and around up in here. Now the key is you don't want to overdo it. You want to leave some of that shadow poking through, just so that it gives it, you know, more of a wispy sort of look. All right, so I'm going to add in quite a bit of shadow up in here. I'm going to really shade in this area over here. And grab the kneaded eraser again. Just press and twist. Now there's some areas that will show up and will, you know, it'll kind of really look odd, you know, different from the rest, and those areas you can just erase right out. Alright, and just go back in with the blending stump. And just kind of, touch areas up. Go back in with the eraser again. You can really work. You can really go over the top with this, but you can really overdo it sometimes as well. I heard someone say once, I don't remember who, I might have mentioned this before, but I found it kind of funny. They said it takes 2 great artists to make one painting. One to actually create and paint it, the other to tell them when to stop, because sometimes you can get carried away. But I'll leave the call up to you as to when enough is actually enough. But you can easily get carried away with within the drawing, and that's the fun of it. So I'm gonna do the same thing down here and really work out the tops of these clouds, really, sort of bringing them to life. You want to keep the paintbrush handy just to wipe away any of the excess eraser shavings, because you get a lot of it when you do the clouds. Alright, just something like that. I mean, this is coming up relatively well. And then you can just tweak the overall shape of it. Want to lighten up this area a little bit in here. That way I can go back in, shade it in a little bit more. I want to try and layer this cloud a little bit as well, kind of give it multiple platforms, make it more like a puffy pillow, I guess you could say. So I'll lighten up this area up here. I'll come back in with the blending stump and kind of darken this area a little bit. I want to have the top of this cloud have more of a sharp edge or angle to it. Something like that. Just sort of clean up what got messed up with the eraser. Just something like that. Okay, so go back in, and don't worry about the lines that we made for the tree. We can always add them back in. I'm going to go back in with the fine eraser and just kind of bring out some of those highlights a little bit. So typically, wherever you have a highlight, there should be a shadow relatively close to it. It just really helps to bring them out and pronounce them. Makes them really show up. Two of the things that I always had trouble with drawing is clouds and leaves. And since I've been drawing those so many times, I've been really practicing them. Now I can relatively draw them with ease. It just takes practice, and you kind of have to build up a method of how to do it. So this is one of my methods of drawing clouds, and typically these big puffy clouds are the ones that I really like to draw. And it's just constantly going back and forth between the eraser and the blending stump to really bring out those highlights. Just something like this. Oh, let me bring this back down. I notice it's out of camera. Alright. But you can constantly go back and forth between the different tools, just really perfecting the way it looks. So you can easily spend an hour just working on the clouds. But it's all about just taking your time, going back and forth, and just perfecting. everything that you've done, just so that you're happy with it in the end result. Then I can go back in over here. I'm going to carry out some of these clouds into the sky here just a little bit. You know, little bits of clouds that are breaking off from the rest. Maybe this little bit of cloud will come over and join this one. Who knows? Sort of do the same thing over here, just a little bit. Just to kind of make it look like it's a bit more free-spirited. Just in the world, doing its thing. And just like that, you know, after 25 minutes here, you got some clouds. And that will set us up for the next portion of the drawing, which will be the mountains. So those will be shaded in very similar to what I have done with these. It's going to be quite a bit of detail. I'm going to really darken them in like I have with this one. But that will be next video that I will cover how to do that. And in this video, it will just be the clouds. But I hope you all enjoyed this one. If you did, please subscribe. Especially subscribe if you want to see the following videos. And give me a thumbs up. It always helps out. And I will see you all later. Take care.